योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. So last time we looked at Sutra 1.32, which was Tat Pratishedhartham Ekatatvabhyasah. And the whole idea in Vyasa's commentary was to establish the understanding that Ekam Anekartham Avasthitam Chittam, which is Chitta is one, there is only one Chitta, and it operates on multiple objects and multiple meanings and multiple conceptions. And therefore, given this understanding of Chitta, what is Ekagrata? Right? That is what Vyasa established last time. Now we move on to a new subsection within this called Chitta Parikarma.
So, in the commentary, the philosophical positions have been taken into considerations, and there are refutations of certain philosophical positions. For instance, when it is suggested Eka Tattvabhyasaha, that means something is stable, something is steady, something is constant, something has to be constant. Eka Tattvabhyasaha, Abhyasaha means your constancy of the chitta, constancy of the mind, steadfastness of the mind. And then there should be some principle support on which you are trying to establish stability. So there are philosophical positions like momentarism. So the momentarists have an argument. They say everything is ephemeral, everything is impermanent, everything is, as a matter of fact, momentary. They have strong arguments to prove that everything is momentary. Nothing is stable, nothing is steady. And then you are suggesting Eka Tattvabhyasaha. That means it is suggesting someone to walk steadily when the whole surface is having slippery, oily surface. Now, if you are to walk on an oily surface, and at the same time you are suggested you should be steadily walking, you understand the contradiction there. Something should be steady for you to be walking steadily, if that itself is not steady. So they say nothing is steady, everything is ephemeral, everything is impermanent, and still you are suggesting Eka Tattvabhyasaha, constancy, steadfastness. So, yes, in one view, everything is momentary. Everything is a flow. Creation is a flow. So therefore, you will not be able to catch something. Like when the river is flowing, you can't touch the same water once again. You are not in the same time and space once again. We are ever moving. If you take the view of this time and space, we never return to same space once again in one perspective, which is true. But then in business of life we say, I am coming to institute every day. Last Sunday we were here, today we are here, so we are again coming here. Next Sunday we will again come here. But it can be argued that you can never come back. You can come back to institute, but you can never come back to same space and same time once again, because everything is flowing. So everything is unsteady, and then you are suggesting that something should be steadied, your mind should be steadied. Mind itself is a flowing thing, and it doesn't have any constant support, a steady support on which it can fasten itself. So that's the momentarist philosophy. Yes, it is true, everything is changing, everything is momentary. Sometimes, in negative state of, when we say, oh, nothing is constant, everything is steady, it is definitely a negative state of mind psychologically. Leave aside the reality. But when you say that nothing is steady, nothing is constant, everything is changeful, nothing can be believed, nothing can be trusted, and there can be no credibility, this is negative tone. So these are negativistic philosophers who raise up philosophical structure on that. So, of course, this is not coming for your first reading, but just I will introduce to you that the concept of avayava and avayavi has beautifully come in the commentary. Yes, no doubt, everything is unsteady, everything is changeful, nothing is constant. But if you are going to that extent of reality, we can go further beyond that extent of reality. So Vyasa and Patanjali take a step beyond these heterodox philosophers who have this argument that there can be nothing like steady mind. There is nothing like steady object. Now, do you mean to say that this is a steady object? It is constantly changing because it is going from newness to oldness, and at some point in time it will be dismantled, it will be gone, it will be destroyed. This will be destroyed at some point in time. For it to be destroyed, at every moment it is going from newness to oldness. That's called Parinamvada. It is changing. Nothing is unchangefully in the universe, constantly changing and heading towards destruction, heading towards end. We are all heading towards death. Once we are born, we are heading towards death. So they say, if you are putting an argument on such a reality, which is of course can't be refuted, we will show you a step beyond the reality, your reality. There is further more reality. Listen to this. What is it? Avayava avayavi bhava. This is constantly changing. This is a whole. This is a whole made up of several parts. There are several particles, atoms, particles, which are constituting an object, any object, and this object, for example. So the microphone is not steady. It is there today, it will not be there tomorrow. But the one which is constituting this, the particles are constant. That's why there is a view in ecology, nothing can be destroyed. This is the view of a science called ecology, nothing can be destroyed. The whole can be destroyed. So mic will cease to be a mic after some time. But that which constitutes these atomic particles, subatomic particles, they are indestructible. They will ever stay there. That means the constituted is ephemeral. But constituents are eternal. Is that right? Do you understand this? The constituted microphone, any tile, any object, anything like our bodies, we are not permanent. But what constitutes us? Constituents are more long lasting. This can become ash and therefore no microphone, but something remains as ash. So nothing can be destroyed in the universe. This is the ecological view. This view was there those 3000 years back, and even before Patanjali, because Patanjali is one of the link from the philosophies. So those philosophers had greater insight, and they said, no, avayavi, the whole, is ephemeral. But avayava, the parts, the constituents, are not ephemeral. They are not subject to destruction. The final particles such as proton, neutron, electron cannot be getting destroyed. Atoms and other the constituted will change the forms, will cease to exist. But final constituents don't get destroyed. So there is something which is not ephemeral, something that is permanent. So your stand is not valid, and that's how they refute. So they go to the metaphysical plane because they had a cavil that chitta is unsteady, there is no steady object. Where are you going to have focus? Where are you going to establish your chitta on? Because no object is steady, constant. So that's a cavil, and they take recourse to a reality. They say nothing is permanent, everything is impermanent. So Patanjali and Vyasa show a step beyond. If that is the case, listen to this reality which is beyond your reality. So yours is not ultimate reality, we are showing you ultimate reality. And therefore it is possible, if you consider dharma, dharmi, avayava, avayavi, then something is constant there. So there is a possibility that there can be steady chitta, there can be an object of support which is everlasting, which doesn't get destroyed. You can't have some rose or lotus as a steady object because they will perish. But there are certain steady things, supports, not objects, steady supports. And those supports can be taken by chitta so that it can have constancy, it can have steadfastness, it can have a steady state. So these philosophical aspects have come in the sutra. Because they brought a cavil and therefore they showed a reality. So Vyasa Patanjali showed a higher reality. That's called refutation of their stands. This comes a lot in philosophy and is very essential. So then this Tattva-abhyasa seems to be a martial kind of thing. Constancy, resoluteness, I will never leave, I will never compromise, I will stick on. This seems to be a martial kind of nature, which is not desired in yoga. So, how can you have such a state of mind? So there are certain chitta parikarma processes. Take recourse to that. Then you will be able to steady your mind. If the mind is unsteady, because you can't arrest the mind for it to be steady. What is the way to steady the mind? To steady the mind, there are certain means. If you are in a mundane, materialistic condition, your mind will never be steady. That's why we have suggested satsanga. When you are in satsanga, the mind will become steady. So such means are mentioned here, how the mind can be steadied, which seems to be a difficult proposition, and Eka-tattva-abhyasa is possible if you take recourse to this. So tat pratishedartham Eka-tattva-abhyasa vyadhi-adi dukkha daurbanasya-adi tat pratishedartham Eka-tattva-abhyasa. And for Eka-tattva-abhyasa, if it seems to be a difficult thing, here are the means coming. So that's why this is a connectivity to the topic that follows of chitta parikarma. So that there comes the first sutra there.
So Vyasa introduces the sutra by saying, Yasya chittasya avasthitasya idam shastrena parikarma nirdishyate tat katham. Right? So he is asking a question. He says, of this chitta, which was just described, right? Ekam, anekartham. of this chitta, the parikarma as stated by the Shastras, how and what are these parikarma, right? So what is parikarma? Parikarma is, in some sense, cleaning or polishing or purifying or finishing, right? So for example, snanam, okay, having bath, is a sharira parikarma, because by that you clean, purify the body, right? So here what we are looking at is chittasya parikarma, okay? So it is cleaning, polishing and so on. Now why is that required? So for sthiti, steadiness, even from the guna perspective, sattva, raja, tama, the purifying removes the impurities of the form of raja and tama, right? And therefore we can come to sthiti, which was just described in the ekatattva abhyasaha. Okay. So now let's look at Sutra 1.33. The sutra is Maitri Karuna Muditopekshanam Sukadukka Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanataha Chitta Prasadanam. Okay. So firstly, it's a compound word that says Maitri Karuna Mudita Upeksha. Okay, Maitri Karuna Muditopekshanam with respect to Sukha Dukha Punya Punya Vishayanam. Okay. So here there is a one-to-one correspondence. We'll look at it in detail. So Maitri for Sukha, Karuna for Dukkha and so on, right? So I'll explain that. And then Bhavanataha, from such a Bhavana, okay? Chitta Prasadanam. What do you get? You get Chitta Prasadanam. So now there are several terms here. Each of these terms need to be properly understood what they mean. So first let us start with what it means by saying Bhavanataha, okay? So Bhavanataha means from this Bhavana, from such a Bhavana, due to such a Bhavana, okay? Now what is Bhavana? So Bhavana usually is translated to feeling or emotion and so on. Now that is not entirely incorrect, okay? So feeling, emotion is in some sense correct. So what it's saying is Maitri Bhavana. So the feeling of friendliness, that is how it's translated. Towards whom? Towards people experiencing Sukha. Okay, that is what is advised for the cleanliness and purity of the chitta. But this feeling of friendliness, the bhavana, I thought let's understand that a little bit. Now what is bhavana? Bhavana is jnana visheshaja vasana. Okay? So the vasana arising from a particular jnanam or a particular mental conception. Now what is vasana? Vasayati. Okay? Vasayati karmana yojayati jiva manausi iti vasana. So vasana is something that makes something reside in the chitta. Vasayati, make it reside. Right? So vasana is the one who makes something reside. So in this case, Maitri Bhavana, so Maitri is a Jnana Vishesha. Now the Vasana of that is the thing that makes Maitri reside in the Chitta. That is the Maitri Bhavana. Okay? So the Chitta is to be pervaded and something has to reside there. Maitri has to reside there. So that is the way you have to understand Bhavana. Bhavana is the entity that causes something to reside, and from that you are getting Chitta Prasadanam.
See, Vasana word is unnecessarily tainted. We think Vasana means something bad. So it is unnecessarily tainted. It's not the case, because there is also expression Shubha Vasana. It's a gravity. Vasana is a gravity. It's not necessarily, it should be bad gravity every time. So Shubha Vasana, Ashubha Vasana. But then in common man's parlance, Vasana is a bad word. It's a tainted word unnecessarily. So we have Shubha Samskar, Ashubha Samskar, Shubha Vasana, Ashubha Vasana. So here, when the Vasana word has come, so do not look at it in that sense, which is the kind of notion in us, Vasana is something bad thing. So Shubha Vasana. So in science and philosophy, the words are to be understood in not in popular sense. Not in popular sense or whatever is the meaning in vogue. So take the word as vasana, not as a bad tainted word. Shubha vasana. So this is a Shubha vasana. Maitri bhava prati sukhi.
Right. So now let's look at the other terms. So Maitri, we know that. So it's a well-known word. It's friendliness. It's Maitri bhavaha, Mitra bhavaha, and so on. Towards people who have attained Sukham, okay, who are happy. Now, to understand why that, in each case, to understand why that helps clean or purify the Chitta, let us look at if you don't do this. If you don't have Maitri, what you will typically have is some kind of envy or jealousy, right? So you will say, okay, they are getting Sukha, they are lucky, what did they do to deserve it, or whatever. So those kinds of thoughts are against the cleansing of the Chitta. And therefore, you have to make, it says, the bhavana or the thing that makes Maitri reside in the Chitta in the context of Sukha Sambhoga Panneshu. So the people who have, for some reason right now, are happy, have attained some kind of happiness. Right? So that goes towards Chitta Parikarma. The next is for people who are suffering dukkha or sorrow. Karuna, right? So Karuna is karunyam, in some sense compassion. Anukampa means empathy. And Nairmalyam, okay? So Karuna is also Nairmalyam. So again to understand this, if there is, in the absence of compassion and so on, there might be a feeling of, okay, good, let them go through that sorrow. They did this last time, and now let them suffer, right? So that feeling is against the cleansing of the Chitta, because it is immediately, very evidently, an impurity on the Chitta, right? So therefore, Karuna. The next is Mudita, towards Punya, okay? So Mudita is Modaha, Harshaha, so happiness, right? So wherever there is Punya being seen, there is a joy due to the fact that there is Punya being seen, which immediately is more towards a sattvic nature, right? So and the opposite could be, so for example, you might say that now they are doing good, right? But in the past it was not good at all, or so on. So those kinds of thoughts, quite evidently, it is against the cleansing of a Chitta. So therefore Mudita. And then Upeksha towards Apunya or Papa, wrongdoing. Upeksha, in some sense, is disregard, right? Or Upeksha means Tyagaha, Idam na mama iti bhavaha. So Upeksha says, it is nothing to do with me. I should not be affected. Idam na mama. Right? So give away, indifference, disregard towards Apunya. So this bhavana that makes these feelings or these concepts reside in the mind in the context of these things being observed by the yogi, right? That brings about Chitta Prasadanam. Prasadanam is Prasannata, Nairmalyam. So basically purity, pleasantness. Okay?
You see, here the reference is to our reactionary consciousness. Being living beings, all the living beings have a reactionary consciousness. They react. And then human beings here, we have reactionary consciousness. We need to reform our reactionary consciousness. Most of the problems, most of the fights, most of the troubles, relation problems, they come because of the reactionary consciousness not being cultured. So the suggestion here is to understand the concept of reactionary consciousness and try to reform the reactionary consciousness. So suppose you see a very happy person. The reaction should be friendliness, not envy, as he just now said, malice, etc. So suppose you see a person in sadness, sorrow. your reaction should be compassionate. You must have that kind of reaction rather than anything other than that. Otherwise you can react. Wonderful. This had to happen. This person deserves it. It's good that he is suffering. This is our reaction. Sometimes we react like that. So we have different reactions to people who are sorrowed. Sometimes we are indifferent. Oh, let's take a bypass. Let's not go closer to such a person. He is already in sorrow. So we go away from such a person, or we have negative reactions. So we can have several reactions. So if our mind should be placid and not turbulent, so certain reactions are suggested here. Maitri prati, sukha prati, maitri. Somebody is happy, in delight, happiness, you must have friendliness and not any other reaction. If somebody is in sorrow, you must have compassion and not any other reaction. If somebody is a virtuous person committing virtues, you must have gladness, mudita, and not some other reaction. If somebody is sinful, sinister, you must have the reaction of the nature of indifference rather than any other reaction. So try to understand how do we react to these conditions: sukha, dukkha, punya, and papa. Now, usually we think that Patanjali is giving these advices to wild people, not civilized. Because usually we say we are always happy if we are friendly if somebody is happy. If somebody is sad, we are compassionate, we have empathy. So we think we are all well civilized, and Patanjali is trying to advise uncivilized people that practice Maitri for Sukha, Karuna for Dukkha, etc., etc. So we think that it is not applicable to us. We are far decent. We are not wild people. Now here Patanjali is giving this advice in first chapter, which is for Uttamadhikari. He is already a yogi. Now if yogi needs such an advice, if somebody is happy, be friendly, somebody is sad, be compassionate, we can't understand why. Yogis should be having reformed reactionary consciousness. Why the yogi is being given advice? But this sutra is really very significant. See, the thing is like that. We are all very civilized. We have very good mind, all of you. We have quiet mind, serene mind, passive mind. Everyone here has a very good mind here. Is that right? Now you sit for meditation. You sit for meditation. See what will happen. The dirt will come to surface. Now, if at all any dirt is there, it is suppressed, it's gone down. But if you sit for meditation, suppose we stop talking, we'll say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we are not going to say anything, and you close your eyes and go for meditation. Then you will understand the monkey trick of your mind. Is that right? So we are more agonized when we take recourse to meditation. Now we have very civilized mind, serene mind, quiet mind, placid mind, sublime mind. We have no, what you call malais now in our mind. Our mind is malais free. But sit for meditation, see what will happen. Malais will surface. And then you will see that the mind is disturbed. Nobody's mind is now disturbed. But if I say close your eyes and meditate, in no time your mind will be disturbed. Is that right? So when the dirty water is steady, the moss comes to surface. When unclean water is steady, the moss comes to surface. Is that right? So in meditation, if you are trying to steady your mind, the moss will surface. What is the moss? It disturbs you. We are never happy to see moss layer on the water. Oh, what a wonderful water. Moss म्हणजे शेवाळं. पाण्यावर शेवाळं असेल, we don't appreciate steady water. We don't appreciate the steadiness of the water. Because unless the water is steady, the moss will not surface. शेवाळं बघून कोणालाही आनंद होत नाही. वा, काय सुंदर शेवाळ आहे. The water is steady. You can't appreciate steady water. So when we try to steady the mind, these things surface which are not on the surface. Now what is being suggested, generally we are all good. Generally we are all civilized. Generally we all have very good reaction in consciousness. Somebody is happy, friendliness. Somebody is sad, compassion, etc., etc. Generally we all have good reactionary consciousness. But there is an exception. Although all of you might be almost saying, they are all in saintly condition now. Balanced mind, equal mind, unagitated mind, is that right? But everyone have a person in our mind, a thing in our mind, a condition in our mind. In that condition, we tend to react wrongly. With that person, we tend to react wrongly. We have some malaise for particular person. That is called kalushya. कलुषित असतं आपलं मन. एखाद्या व्यक्तीविषयी कलुषित असतं. So we have malice with reference to particular person, particular thing and particular condition. In particular condition of our mind, we have the kalushya. आपलं मन कलुषित झालेलं असतं. That really gives problem in meditation. If your meditations are ever disturbed, it is this reason that somewhere we have improper reactionary consciousness. With reference to someone, we have malice. Generally, we don't have malice. Oh, you won you are happy, I am friendly. You won the raffle, you won ₹1,000,000. Oh, I am happy. But there is a person, if he wins a raffle of ₹1,000,000, we are not happy. Oh, he should not have won. He should not have got it. So we have to identify where is our kalushya. Which is that person, which is the thing, which is the condition, which is the situation where we have out of place reactionary consciousness. Generally we don't have it, but somewhere we have it. That needs to be reformed. That is called chitta kalushya, technically. And this is suggested for that. So generally you are friendly with all happy, but that person with whom we are not friendly when he is happy, understand this condition and do some reformation there. How to react with this particular person. Generally we react well with other persons, but this person we don't react well. This condition we don't react well. With this thing we don't react well. So identify such a thing, such a situation, such a condition, such a person where we have wrong reactionary consciousness bubbling up. That has to be reformed. That is called reforming reactionary consciousness. Everyone, we are supposed to be doing it. Unless we are saints, everyone should be doing it. We somewhere badly react. We have kept it in a reserved kind of condition. That person comes, our mind doesn't react well. That thing comes at sight, we don't react well. We have such a condition in life, we don't react well. We are in such a situation in life, we don't react well. Identify such condition, situation, thing and person and reform with respect to that, in relation to that. That's why Maitri, Karuna. So don't think this is not meant for us. Because we anyway have Maitri for Sukhi, Karuna for Dukhi. In particular condition of the life, in your condition, you won't react properly. Suppose you are already angry. Where is the chance that you will react properly? Suppose you are already desperate. What is the chance that you will react properly? Where is the chance? Hardly any chance that you will react properly if you are desperate, frustrated, dispirited, dejected, angry. There are certain conditions of our mind. In that condition, we don't react well. So this must be understood. and some steps and measures should be taken for such kind of a reaction. Okay? This is the purport of the sutra, not general instruction. It's not norm suggested here. Patanjali is not needed, and certainly not in the Samadhi Pada. It's highest hierarchy. Uttama Adhikari. So it's not general meaning. Practice norms, practice friendliness with Sukhi, have compassion for Dukhi. You don't need Patanjali to tell you. Like many times we tell a person, you don't need to tell me, I know it. Is that right? You need not tell me. You need not tell me. Someone else tells, it's okay. You need not tell me. So Patanjali is not needed to tell this. Leave it to Prashant to tell these things. Why Patanjali is required? हे सांगायला पतंजली कशाला पाहिजे? मी सांगेन तुम्हाला. It's not like that. There's a wonderful topic of Chitta Kalushya here, which is introduced by Vachaspati Mishra.
Yeah. So the other, I just thought I'll refer to one of the Bhagavad Gita shlokas here, because it's one of the sutras where it's yogi in the context with the rest of the world, with the other people. Right? So in the 12th chapter, Krishna says, Yasman no dvijate loko, lokan no dvijate chayaha, harsha bhayodvegair mukto yas sachame priyaha. So, Yasman no dvijate loko. So by the one by whom the world does not get agitated. Right? So he doesn't trouble the world. Lokan no dvijate chayaha. The one who does not get troubled by the world. Right? So both sides. And such a person who is free from extremes of pleasure, pain, fear and so on, he is dear to me. So that is what Bhagavad Gita is saying, which is also related to the sutra at hand. So let us look at Vyasa's commentary. So the first line, Vyasa is explaining the sutra. So he says, Tatra sarva pranishu sukha sambhogapanneshu maitrim bhavayet. So for all the worldly creatures who are associated or who have attained some sort of sukha or happiness, maitrim bhavayet. So cultivate friendliness. So here when we say bhavayet, often it is in terms of bring about that feeling, or sometimes just imagine, right? But now from our understanding of bhavana, like I explained now, jnana visheshaja vasana, vasayati yojayati jiva manamsi iti vasana. So here what is being said is cultivate the thing that makes maitri or friendliness take residence in the chitta. Right? So it is pervading, it is residing in the chitta, and that is what Vyasa is referring to. And once that friendliness is there, when a friend is happy, we also feel happy. Right? So that is a direct consequence. So that is what is being said here. So in general, it is not surfacial or it is not partial. Whenever is something said so clearly, it means it is 100% complete residence of Maitri in the Chitta. Right? So there is no place for anything else, any impurities or unsteadiness there. Dukkhiteshu karunam. So this we already saw. Punyatmakeshu muditam. So mudita, joy, gladness towards one who is engaged in punya. Apunyashileshu upeksham. So we already saw disregard, tyagaha, idam na mama iti bhavaha. So this is not mine, nothing to do with me, in terms of papa. Now what happens when you do this? Evam asya bhavayataha shuklo dharma upajayate. Right? So what takes birth in the chitta? Right? So what emerges? Shukla dharma. Shukla, the direct meaning is the white color. It also pertains to purity. It also pertains to sattva, in the sattva rajatama triad. So the shuklo dharma, which means the very characteristic of the chitta, becomes shukla or sattvikada. The sattva guna dominates, it pervades. When these things, the bhavana or bhavanam happens of all these concepts in that respective relations. Then what happens? Tataha cha chittam prasidati. So chitta gets prasadaha, grace, prasannata, pleasantness, joy, nairmalyam, purity, complete absence of impurities. So chittam prasidati. Then what happens? Prasannam ekagram sthitipadam labhate. So here we are seeing a straight gradation from the initial state to the final state. So from this prasannam or nairmalyam, there is ekagram sthitipadam. So now the ekagram, we saw that there is one alambanam, one support, completely steady. From Guruji's analogy, the water of the lake is completely still. And this we get a sthiti, prashanta vahita sthitihi. So in this state, it continues in a very placid form. So that is sthiti padam. It attains that state. Prasannam ekagram sthiti padam labhate. That is what Vyasa says. Again, if you look at the Gita, in the second chapter, a similar thing is touched upon. Again, where Krishna says, Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran atma vaschair videyatma prasadam adigacchati. So again, when somebody is bereft of raga and dvesha, attachment, desire and hatred, bereft of those, and he is moving in this world of vishaya and indriya, senses and objects of senses, atma vashya videyatma, will full control over himself and the things in his embodiment. Prasadam adigacchati, he reaches this prasada. We saw what is prasada. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasya upajayate. What emerges? It is the hanihi, the destruction of all the sorrows, all the dukkha or all the impurity. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasya upajayate. Prasanna chetaso yashu buddhihi paryavatishthate. So prasanna chetasaha, now he has become prasanna chetasaha. Ashu, very soon, immediately. Buddhihi paryavatishthate. So the buddhi gets established in sthiti. So this is the direct correlation of what is there in the second chapter with what is being said in the similar gradation in Vyasa's commentary on this particular sutra. So in some sense this sutra is special because it is a little bit about the outwardly engagement of a yogi. But if you notice, the yogi is highly sensitive to the state of the chitta. So the prime consideration by which he would drive his life is, oh, what will happen to my chitta, right? So extreme sensitivity to that, and that is governing the conduct in the world, right? So for example, somebody in the path of yoga, maybe he is called somewhere to be honored, to be felicitated and so on. Somebody on that path may say no, because he'll say, oh, if I go there, I might get proud, I might get some amount of arrogance, my chitta will get rajoguna, so I don't want to come. Right? At the same time, somebody fully established in yoga, who has complete control, and he knows that this is not going to affect me, he might as well go and get honored and get felicitated from the point of view of, again from the Gita, he says, Loka sangrahamevapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. So if you are already in a state, when you are already a Shrestha, at that time you can look at Loka Sangraha, for the good of the world. And therefore I'll go into the world and get honors and everything. For somebody who is at a state, who has enough control over the chitta to know that Raja and Tama impurities are not going to touch me. Okay? And this you have seen in Guruji's life and everywhere else.
You see, because some people are critical about Patanjali's sutra, this particular sutra, because Patanjali says for papatmakeshu, those who are in sins, you should be indifferent. So some people, the social reformers, they say, no, if somebody is sinning, you must help the person to come out of the sin, rather than becoming indifferent. Why is that Patanjali says you should be indifferent to sinisters? So social reformers don't like this advice of Patanjali, that you should be indifferent to sinning people or sins of the people. They do not understand the purport here. He is not a sociologist. He is not speaking for sociology perspective point of view. He is saying, if you want to be steady the mind, quieten the mind, you must be indifferent to a sinning person. Because otherwise the reaction of a missionary would be to help a person. Help such a person. But then in that case, you are looking for your mind to be placid and quiet. In that state, you should be indifferent. Say for instance, somebody is in a utter difficulty, suffering. Now generally you should go and help. But suppose you yourself are very, very ill or almost bedridden, you can't be doing anything. It is not right for you to go and help and seek help for yourself. Suppose I am weak on a day and somebody is suffering, and if I try to go to help, the situation will be that I will need help of other people to get me back home. I have gone to help someone, but in such a condition I have gone to help a person that I need help for other people to help me to get back home. It is not right. So you are not in a condition to help, so you should not be helping. So when you are looking for placidity of the mind, quietness of the mind, don't try to become a social reformer. Somebody is sinning, let me reform the person. That will spoil your own mind. It will become more disturbed, because it is not easy to reform such an unscrupulous person, sinister person, sinning person. This is for chitta parikarma. This is as a means to samadhi. If you are going towards samadhi or yogic pursuits, then you need to have different kind of reaction, rather than those who are so-called humane people. Humane. Patanjali is not trying to make a humane. He is giving instructions for your yoga, and therefore he says, be indifferent. And some of the social reformers, they don't like this advice. They don't understand why this advice is given. Do you follow? So upeksha is not accepted in social norm. Indifference to sinning people is not suggested. But that is in social reformation. This is for your own yoga, your yoga. And therefore he says this is how you should react. And not try to go all out and help. Sometimes you go all out and help, and you are all out. You go and help all out, you go all out and help a person, and by the time that help is over, or not even complete or incomplete or complete, whatever might be the case, you become all out. This is not a good kind of norm to be practiced. If you are capable, if you have disposition, if that is your mission of the life, to help the downtrodden, help the sinister, sinning people, then you can go all out. Do you follow? So that's why the upeksha bhava has been suggested, because it is a pursuit of yoga. You are trying, it is a means to quieten your mind, have prasad of your mind. The mind must be receiving a prasad. So in such an endeavor you won't get the prasad. You'll be more troubled. So sometimes people try to draw someone from troubled waters. Both of them sink in troubled waters at the end of it. I try to lift someone from troubled water, and both of us sink. It's not a good outcome. Or I save him and I am sunk. It's also not a positive kind of condition. I have sunk and he has been saved. I should save him, and not that I should be needing a savior. So it depends upon how you should react, your capacities, capabilities, abilities, whether you can do in case of normative principle. But here this is for yoga, chitta prasadana. Therefore it's a perfect instruction that upeksha bhav for sinisters.
Okay. So, moving to the next sutra. So we are looking at parikarma, right? So the next sutra will take a completely different paradigm for chitta parikarma. So the thing to understand here is there are different means for the cleansing of chitta to be adopted, maybe suitable for different people or suitable at different times, right? So all of them need to be understood. So the Sutra 1.34 says, Prachardana vidharanabhyam va pranasya. Okay. So again, let's look at the Sutra, what it says. So Prachardanam, in some sense, it is a certain type of a yogic pranayamic exhalation. We'll see what it is. Vidharanabhyam. So Vidharanam means, again, a specific type of pranayamic yogic inhalation and retention.
Exhalation and retention. Exhalation and retention. Prana kriya is exhalation.
Okay, so we'll discuss that. Okay, so Prachardana vidharanabhyam. So these are two means of what? Pranasya, of the prana. And va says or. So the Maitri Karuna Upeksha is one. Or the next alternative is Prachardana vidharanabhyam va pranasya. So this is another way to get the chitta parikarma, in this case, the cleansing of the chitta. So Vyasa will explain Koshtyasya vayoho nasika putabhyam prayatna visheshat vamanam prachardanam. Right? So in a specific technique, and the technique maybe he could describe, or there are several techniques you will find in the Yoga Upanishads, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and so on, but all this says is a qualified yogi, specifically vamanam, giving away or exhaling. What? Koshtyasya vayuhu, the air in the antarjataram, so in the sort of the abdomen and abdominal organs. Prayatna visheshat, with a specific method. Vamanam, that is called prachardanam. Okay. Vidharanam pranayamaha. So that is what Vyasa has explained. So what happens? Tabhyam va manasaha sthitim sampadayet. So by these two, also alternatively, the mind, or of the mind, the sthiti. So we looked at what is sthiti, the steadiness, and the purity is attained. Okay, so that is what is being said, that in terms of in situations of turbulence, we have this as a secondary means. Okay. So if you look at Vidharanam pranayamaha, at least one definition is yogokta ritya antapanam tad antasthapanam cha. So it says the Vidharanam is the exhalation, so the Koshtasya vayu being dispelled out. That is Prachardanam, and Vidharanam is through the yogic methods, antapanam of the vayu and antasthapanam. And so the abdominal vayu is then retained in that place. So now if you look at Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there is this thing that says chale vate chalam chittam nischale nischalam bhavet. So there is a close correlation between the vayu and the state of the chitta. So when the vayu is unsteady and moving, the chitta is unsteady and moving. When vayu is not unsteady and moving, the chitta is also not unsteady and moving. So chitta is steady. So that is what the theorem chale vate chalam chittam nischale nischalam bhavet. Okay, and there's some more, but I think let's first hear him.
So, the first sutra was reactionary consciousness. With reference to world around you, things around you, people around you, situations which are around you, how to react. That's a reactionary. So first step is reactionary consciousness. But then there are other alternatives have to be given, because every time you are not in reactionary consciousness, you don't have to react to the world every time. Subjectivistically what? Your mind may not be placid for your own reasons. Not that somebody is around you is not good, not proper. A thing around you is not good, not proper. Not necessary. Sometimes within yourself, you have disturbance potentials. So it's a subjectivistic means. If your mind is not steady, not placid, not quiet, not pure, not serene, not transparent, for subjectivistic reasons, what should be done?
So Prachardana Vidharanabhyam. So Prachardana suggests an exhalative process. And literally it is a sharper exhalation, flushing exhalation, flush out. If you flush out your exhalation, it's not only that you will flush out the breath, you will also flush out the other side of the breath, which is, as he said, Chalai Vatam, Chalai Chittam. The Chitta and Vayu, Chitta and breath are two sides of the same coin. So if you have expelled your exhalation, you also expel the other side of it, which is the negative aspect of the mind. The dirt of the mind, that is also expelled. Because the mind and breath are two sides of the same coin. Get to know this. This is the precept in yoga. They are not two different things, that this is breath and this is mind. They are two sides of the same coin. And that's why the Hatha Yogic quotation, Chalai Vatam, Chalai Chittam. So if the mind is unsteady, the breath is unsteady. If the breath is unsteady, the mind is unsteady. If the breath is steady, the mind will be steady. If the mind is steady, the breath will be steady. That's the relationship between the two. And here, when the mind is not in a placid condition, but in a turbulent condition, exhalation should be taken recourse to. There are several ways of exhalations. Like if you want to clear dirt from a particular thing, sometimes you have to have a heavy gush or force or heavy kind of sweep. But then there are subtle forms of dust or dirt which should be, with a delicate touch, have to be displaced. So some grosser dirt can be blown away. You can blow the grosser dirt. But subtle dirt, there are subtler means, finer means for subtler kind of dirt. So the exhalation can take place like sharp, thick, a flush of it on one hand. On the other hand, it can be soft, tender, delicate. Say for instance, if you are going to clean the compound, what is the broomstick of a compound? Tala karata manta. Karata. Now that you don't use inside your house, because there is a gross dirt outside, and for the gross dirt to be swept away, you use a typical kind of broomstick which you call as karata. But in the house, you have subtler kind of dust for which you have more finer broomstick, zadu. Devgharamade, more peace. In compound you have karata, but in puja room you have a broomstick made up of peacock feather. More peace as okay. Why? You don't take more piece karata for the compound. That will not work. So it's a grosser dirt, there is one kind of exhalation, and there is a very fine kind of dirt, there is another kind of exhalation, and in between there are several kinds of exhalations, because we have several grades of dirts, from very, 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 very gross to very, 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 very subtle, and you can imagine how much lies in between. So there are several kinds of exhalations to sweep away the dirt of the mind. And then Pracharana Vidharanabhyam. Vidharana is a kind of, it's a retention. Not only retention, sometimes suspension. So after exhalation there can be suspension.
After exhalation, there can be retention. This is a yogic technique. So when you are familiar with the yogic technique, you will know how exhalation can sweep and work for placidity of the mind, and post-exhalative suspension can work for placidity of the mind, or post-exhalative retention can work for placidity of the mind. So Vidharana comes for suggesting something after such an exhalation. So this technique pertains to exhalation. Prachardana is vomit. To have a tender, soft vomit. What's the kind of vomit you have? Because there is a reflux. So something from the belly has to impel the dirt to come out of the mouth. So impelling force in the belly has to be there for the vomit to come out from the mouth. So it's a kind of vomiting kind of exhalation, where the kauthastya vayu, the vayu of the abdomen, which is containing dirt of the mind, has to be flushed out like a vomit. So if you have dirt in the belly, what do? You go for vomit, you do your vomit, even are not getting vomit, you will put your fingers in the mouth and you will trigger a vomit and the dirt will come out. So prachardana vidharanabhyam va pranasya. Prana kriya is exhalative kriya. Apana kriya technically is inhalative kriya. You might be getting confused here. Why? Because when you are inhaling, for inhalation, you feel something going up. Now actually inhalation as a breath, something is going from here down, in and down. Is that right? Inhalation, breath goes in and down in the lungs. But if you watch the process of it, inhalation, something goes up. So this is apanic region. That's why inhalation is apanic kriya. In exhalation, the breath is going out, air is going out. But within yourself, you feel something going down. So this is prana region, this is apana region. So exhalation is prana kriya, inhalation is apana kriya. So this technical aspect should be known. Otherwise you think prana kriya be related to inhalation, apana be related to exhalation. That's not right. There is reference to apana kriya, prana kriya. Apane jivyati pranam, pranam pane tatha pare, Bhagavad Gita. Apane jivvati pranam, prane jivvati apane. So it's offering of apana into prana, inhalation. Offering prana into apana is exhalation. So therefore pranasya, prana kriya, reference to prana kriya. Therefore it is exhalative, not inhalative. Inhalation can give you soothe, but exhalation will give you placidity and quietude. When the inhalation will give you soothe, if there is a wonderful flower, a very good odor, aroma, then inhalation soothes you, because the aroma goes in and gives you pleasure. Inhalation doesn't give you pleasure. Go back to your kitchen, you want to take aroma, you don't exhale in front of the vessel. You inhale in front of the vessel to get the aroma. So aroma gives you soothe. The fragrance gives you soothe. So inhalation can give you soothe provided there is a flower, there is wonderful delicacy prepared, or somebody has sprinkled some scent, etc., fragrance, etc. Then the inhalation will give you soothe. But exhalation will cleanse and give you placidity. So prachardana vidharanabhyam va pranasya. This is a subjectivistic condition. There is no person around me where I should be friendly or compassionate. It's within myself. What is the measure? What is the means? So this is the second means here, subjectivistic. And it is pranayamic.
So we'll stop here today. We'll continue the same sutra a little bit next time, and then complete it and then move on. Okay. So we'll recite the slokas on Guruji. वैज्ञानिकशिक्षकत्वे कलाकार आसनेषु यः योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञः तं वन्दे सुन्दरं गुरुं योगवृक्षो लोकेऽस्मिन् वर्धितो यस्य प्रेरणया योगाचार्याय गुरवे सुन्दराय नमो नमः. So we could take a question or two if there is any.
Yes.
About reaction, when we get into meditation or doing our asanas, so there was a time where I used to react quite a bit, and then when I started my practice, it helped me quite a bit. Now as the practice is going more deeper, what is happening is I realize that when I go in the mundane life after my practice, there are times where I don't need to react, I need to respond, but I just react because I've come from so much of peace space that sometimes it starts reacting the other way. So how do we balance this?
You see, usually we have a kind of notion that spiritual path is a wonderful path, smooth path, all problems are mitigated, etc., set aside, and you overcome all that. So usually we are given this kind of notion that take to spiritual path and everything will be going wonderfully fine. The thing is, when you have just commenced yoga or spiritual pursuit, there is a probability that you will become irksome. You will negatively react by being a seeker of yoga, rather than react more in a reformed way. This is because of a rudimentary and raw condition. When we have just commenced, they are rudimentary and raw. Therefore, you will be more vexed by the ways of the world, because you are trying to reform yourself. When you are trying to reform yourself, those unreformed people create more problem to your mind. You are more agitated, irritated by the ways of the world. But if you are not on the path of reforming, the world doesn't bother you much, because you are also part of the world. You move with the world, you are in the world, you are like the world, worldly people, so you don't feel. So this bitter condition must be understood. If you are taking recourse to reformation, you will be agonized more by the ways of the world. But this is because of formative phase. You are in a formative phase, you will have to go through that. There is no bypass. Like a baby cannot straight away start to walk straight. Don't ever put a condition to a baby: unless you walk straight, don't ever walk. Unless you are able to take your morsel straight away into the mouth, don't try to take morsel to the mouth. I will go on feeding you. I will feed you until time comes that you can take your morsel directly to your mouth. This will not happen. The baby will take morsel everywhere but the mouth. This has to be allowed. The baby will be walking oscillatingly. You have to allow. So formative periods are always like that. So let me tell you, alert you, when you are going to commence yoga, really, you will be more sensitive to the problems which are around you and will be agitated, irritated. But this is inevitable. See, you don't find problem with cereals if they are in front of you. But if the cereals are cooked as rice, you can relish.
But if the cereals are half cooked, then they create more problem. Because you cannot not eat. You cannot not eat it. Like cereals, you will not think of eating cereals, raw cereals. You know that you will get stomachache, so you don't go to eat cereals. But somebody has cooked rice and half cooked, you will have to eat and you will get the stomachache. So half cooked things are always problems. But unless the rice is half cooked, it won't be getting fully cooked. The rice has to go through the process. And the rice will be half cooked at some stage. And it is a mistake that you are trying to eat that half cooked rice. You are going to invite stomachache. So formative stages are like that. So let me tell you, as students of yoga, when you embark upon yoga, you will be troubled by the ways of the world much more than you were troubled before you were initiated. But don't conclude that that was better. Rather than embarking upon yoga, it would have been better not embark on yoga at all. That's not true. If you have to be in a reforming process, problems are going to be there. Because we will be rudimentary and raw. And you will have to go through the process. When you become ripe, then yasmat no dvijate loko loka no dvijate chayaha. That state will come that you will neither agitate others nor the world will be agitating you. But that's a state of accomplishment. So prior to accomplishments, there are problems. So as students of yoga, when you try to reform yourself, when you are quite resolute on reforming yourself, you'll be bothered by the people around you who are not trying to reform, or who are trying to get more and more deformed. That will create a problem for you. But it has to be put up with. Therefore, Maitri Karuna Mudita. So get to know this. You will become super hypersensitive if you embark upon yoga for the bad and the good of the world. And the bad will be more pricking rather than the good giving you pleasure. This is going to happen when you are embarking upon reformation of the consciousness. So just understand, this is my condition, like half cooked rice I'll have to put up. Now this rice is being cooked within you. If the rice is cooked out in the vessel, outside in the vessel, you will say, I will not touch it unless it is cooked. I will not touch that preparation unless it is fully prepared. That can be done, but this is all cooked within you. So half cooked rice will be in your belly. Do you follow? Half cooked consciousness will be in your belly. Within you, you'll have to put up with it. So get to know this reality. When it is sufficiently cooked, then it will not create problem. When it is well cooked, then yogi state, yasma no dvijate loko, loka no dvijate jaya, etc., etc. But this process of reformation is such. And it's not only for you and those who are facing the world after little reformation by yoga. That's why Tukaram, Ratran Divas Ama Yuddha Prasanga. Now we think Tukaram was in a cream condition of consciousness who was about to get liberated, but yet he said in his lifetime, life is a battle. Battle within. Ratran Divas, day and night. Day and night it's a battle. Otherwise we think, oh, he was all the time in the nectar kind of bhakti, soaked in nectar. We won't know reality. He divulges. Ratran divasa amha yuddhata prasanga. So bear this in mind. When you embark upon yoga, the things are not going to be easy. The things are going to become more difficult to assimilate the life, face the life, but that is inevitable. If you want to forego that, you have to forego reformation process. So when, as a beginner, you will confront more problems when you embark upon yoga. The world will bother you more. You will also bother
Like maybe you practice your yoga, but your spouse will say he goes to yoga class and then I have a hell of a time. This is inevitable because we are half cooked. This is going to happen. People around you, your parents will say you are better off not going to yoga. You have started going to yoga and you are creating a problem to us. That has to be accepted. There is no bypass. There is no bypass. You can take bypass something outside you. You can't take bypass which is within you. Do you follow? So I am making you realize this. It is reality. You will have more problems if you embark upon yoga. But that's a formative period. No child wants to be a child throughout the life. The child wants to grow. Doesn't know the plight of the father and mother. The child wants to grow like father and mother. They want to become of that age. The child doesn't know what is the problem for the father and mother. You want the child to be ever child. You don't want your child to be ever child as a parent. But child condition should be ever there actually. But neither the parent wants the child to be always a child. The child neither wants to be a child all the time. But actually the condition is that child should be always a child as far as possible. But then that's not reality of life, and that's not a good reality in life also. The child at the age of 40 is like a child. It's not a good condition. Okay. There's no bypass in internal conditions of reformation. So that dark side of yoga I am exposing to you. It won't be simple, it won't be easy, you'll have to put up with it. A time will come you will say, I was better without yoga. That's a perspective. Or that's an escape. That's not a good thing. You bhakri bhajaयची असेल तर बहिणा भाईचं घ्या. If you want to eat, you will have to take the parch. That's how the life is. If you want to have life is not just enjoyment. Once you enter the life, you will know. Bhina Bai's poem there. That's how reformation is also like that. So don't have the rosy idea. Once I have been in spiritual path, yogi path, everything will be rosy. Everything will be bed of roses. So you'll have problems once you embark upon your reformation. You will be hypersensitive. So you will react that way, but then you have to bear in mind, I am being cooked. I am half cooked. Wait for you to get fully cooked, then you have no problems. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Parikarma. Parikrama, no. Parikarma. Parikrama is circumambulation. The breath will be going into parikrama, orbital breathing. If the chitta is breath is taken through an orbital kind of form, then your mind will become placid. But that is not chitta parikrama, that is breath parikrama. The breath has to circumambulate within, perambulate within, circuitous flow, rhythmic flow, and that is parikrama. And the breath parikrama will give you chitta parikarma, but that will not give you chitta parikrama. Parikarma, it will be purifying the chitta. Yeah, that's a more detailed aspect that comes in practical aspects. Because there are several kinds of dirts. If you have dirt in the front of the brain, a futuristic thought. If you have dirt in the back of the brain, then the past experiences. So you'll have to have different kinds of purificatory processes. Your mind will be turbulent because of what is going to happen tomorrow. You have got anxiety, worry. There is dirt with reference to past. Oh, it happened like that to me. It was a fateful condition, fateful time for me. So there will be dirt of the past as well. So there are different kinds of exhalation to deal with different kinds of dirts. And there are several kinds of exhalations of the heart region. Sometimes there is dirt in the heart, emotional problem. Sometimes there is dirt in the brain, ego problems, identity problems, sometimes passion problems. So there are different kinds of exhalations to deal with various aspects. Passion-based dirt, emotion-based dirt, intelligence, ego, identity-based dirt. So there are several kinds of exhalations which are practical aspects. So it cannot be coming in here so much. Countless ways of exhalations are there. But that comes in practical aspects. So when we are in the laboratory, then we can discuss in that. But when we are in a classroom, we cannot be going for a lab process. Let us get into the lab, and then we'll have so many other things divulged.
Thank you.